Yeah, all right. So week 15, some more 3D drawings this week. I've got four listed. Like I said, the 3D angle bracket, I don't have all the data loaded. I'll load it this afternoon. So I'll start with, I'll just do them in this order: positioner, guide block, then shaft. So positioner is the first one. It's on an inch template. Do you have a PDF of it, which is what's shown below? This is just kind of like a simple low down and dirty that I could just slap it on one of our. So this is as lazy as I could get as an engineering person. Like, here's an image, make it for me drafting. Okay. Essentially, what we want though is we want to do uh, the orthographic views necessary and detail them and annotate them. So we're just going to add dimensions to them, the ones that we need. Maybe not necessarily what they show here, but the ones that it would need for size and location of features. And and an ISO view. So I feel like with this one, I'm kind of pointing in the direction that all we need to do is a front right side and an isometric of this. What I do, so for this week, just think critically of the best orientation for these parts. So on this one, I feel like it's kind of leading towards just the way it's set up and it's given isometric view is that, this might be leaning towards this being front, this being right side, this surface, and this being top. And I'll blast over to your, I'll always forget to I'll send my screen to your screen here so you can see what I'm looking at here a little closer. Yes. All I'm looking is analyzing the way that they've presented this isometric view is kind of leaning towards this being front, right side, this surface, and top. I'm gonna reorient this though. So I feel like on all of these, I've got the trick is a little bit is to second guess the orientation they've given you and then pick a better orientation. And so that's the case with this one. I'm actually going to orient this so that this will be my right side view, and I'll be looking at this sloped surface. And that means that really in this orientation, my left side that's kind of hidden is going to be my front view. So it's going to look like this, only it's going to look like the mirror image of it essentially. So that when I build this, when I place it on my print, that's the way I'm going to make it. um, and I think it's arguable of why I would choose that, but I think it's mostly for better part detail, and it will have its longer like width, the longest width in the front view. And then the only reason why I wouldn't orient this and just choose this as front and then maybe this backside here as my right side view is just because this surface would be the hidden surface. I think it would be fine. It's just that maybe I can expose that sloped surface, in my right side view if I'm looking right on it. And it doesn't really add any advantage though. It's going to look the same as the back view. It's kind of like that one that we just looked at from that one of those view on the ADDA questions that had a surface that was sloped and it still just looks like a square. This or a rectangle in this case. This one will just appear as almost either end will almost look like the same view. So this is maybe not real clear why I would choose this, but I do feel like I'm going to choose this as my front view, but only mirror image it, and then choose this as my right side view, and then yeah. But I think there's a little forgiveness in if you chose the other way, it's not totally wrong. You could also say that, oh, well, if I laid it down on this surface, either this one or the other side, that would be its most stable part. And it would be, but it would kind of hide feature details. So it's pretty common, even if things are kind of like higher than they are deep, like this one has a greater height than depth, that we still maybe would orient it with the greater height in the front view and it's still maybe part stable, but maybe it's not the most stable. So it kind of breaks that rule, but it does show the better details, and the other one would hide more details. So it's kind of like tomato, tomato. And I do feel like that front view is really driven by best detail and usually the longest, width in its. So laying it down in its front view wouldn't be the best for sure. So with all that being said, and then there's a lot of different ways I could cut and chop this thing. So however you build this is fine because it's going to be using the 3D tools. And I'll just show you maybe how I'll do it. Maybe I'll use a little more construction work than some of you might do. And I'm just going to build it anywhere in space. And I think I'll just build it like I'm not pre-planning on how it's going to turn out on my page. And I'm just going to see if it matters. So like we could sit here and plan this out. I do feel like 3D CAD's a little bit weird if you're not moving the UCS and kind of define. I don't know. It's just kind of it's different than Inventor for me, and it's a little bit more. I don't know. I struggle with 3D CAD a little bit in some ways, and so I need to spend hours and hours more with it myself. But I'm just going to build this and just kind of see how it populates. And mostly I want to get it built kind of easily and then just see how to download for you guys to download the see if you have to redo that download and then in order to add it to a sheet. Yeah. So, but first we need an object to try to add to a sheet. So I'm just going to build this thing first. So I'm going to pull this up on my other screen. I'll probably just build a cube. Um, Maybe with the box command, I can just make this rectangular box, and then I can maybe draw some geometry to cut this way, like draw another like triangular shaped geometry, cut out this wedge shape, and draw kind of a rectangular shaped geometry to cut through here, and then just cut out, draw a cylinder to cut through there. So I can kind of use the box command a little bit, or I can just draw the shapes and extrude them. So maybe I'll do a little mix of both. Okay, just to mix it up a little bit. So I'm going to throw this over on my other screen so I have it to follow, and then I'll just open up an inch template. I'll probably put this on a B-size sheet, so I'm just probably just going to open up my template that has a B-size sheet, which I have here if I find it. The semi-inch ISU B-size, this one. So I just have my one sheet. Like I said, when we get to this point, we won't need this viewport, so we can delete it later, but I can just go through and do the modeling first. So here I am in my normal model space. I'm just going to convert it to a 3D model space, which isn't going to change much other than I'm just going to change this to 3D modeling, right? Either there or here, 3D modeling. So I've got the 3D modeling home ribbon menu. And then I'll just change off of the 2D wireframe, whether you do that here on the home menu or just here at the quick access here. I'm just going to change it to like realistic or shaded with edges. I maybe like shaded with edges. And then I'm in the 3D space, which my 3D mouse is now active if I want to use that. But I think I'll just draw this kind of like this in this XY plane, like I'm on this top view here. I know we call it top. I'm just going to draw it as my front view here, and then we'll just kind of this is what I meant. Like, let me just draw it in its simplest shape here and decide how it shows up on my print. And then maybe we can pre-plan the next one to see if it's better to orient it off the, like I said, it really won't matter because you can always kind of like move the orientation as you need to be on the sheet the right way. Maybe it's always better to pre-plan and get it the right without having to move it. But I think where it's new and we're just like first time drawing some stuff to try to get it on the print, let's just draw it and not overthink it. And then we can kind of think about what it did and what maybe I would do on the next one to try to pre-plan better. I think it's just helpful to just kind of draw, get a feel for what it does when it pulls in that image to the drawing and decide if I need to pre-plan better. But for right here, if we just did the box command, it's probably going to put this down here on this view, which was fine. Like the way we drew. So I'm going to kind of draw it like we did last week. I'm just going to draw like a box that's going to end up on this kind of grid plane of kind of like the base of the box will be on kind of this the z-axis 0 coordinate essentially. But I'm not going to really put it to any particular x and y coordinate. So I'm just going to place it here like we did those other objects. So if it was just a box here. And see, this is going to be XY coordinates, right? Like we did last week. So let's just try this and see how this image shows up on our prints when we're done. But it's got some funny dimensions, right? So let me pull up it's like 0.96. It's kind of all these are like 2 decimal place. And I'll try to draw them that way, I guess. I'll just draw them as they actually are on that and see how I'll just make sure I guess we'll see how they line up. But essentially, it's got a length of 3.875. That's 3 7/8. So that's kind of a normal dimension, 3.875 in that direction. And then the kind of the depth of this part or this box is only 0.96, it says. So it's not a full inch. It's like 0.96. So that's really how we were drawn last week. And then this thing says the height is 1.75. So there's just kind of like a box that would be my parts and so this is what I say, like if this is going to become maybe my front view here, this is kind of what I'm visualizing is I want this long width to become a front view. Technically my view cube says front, so I feel like I'm already off to kind of a good like position here. But the question is, do I, miter it this way or that way? Well, the isometric that we were given is kind of shows it mitered from here. But like I told you, I'm going to kind of mirror image this thing and flip that thing so that the miter's on this side here. And the only reason why is because then when I go to a right side view, I'm kind of looking at the miter and it's going to look like this. It's not going to change the rectangular shape of it, but it's kind of like putting that detail up on the viewer's eyeballs if you can is maybe better than burying it behind. It allows me to pretty much just do a front and a right side of this object and then probably an isometric and be sufficient. And I think that's what I detail in the notes is it's kind of a front right side isometric view is enough detail to define this thing. But if you chose to do it the other way, I don't think it's the end of the world. You'd have the miter kind of in the back view of your right side view or the left side. So it's a small detail, and I think it's arguable which one is more right than the other. So I don't think it could be a debatable thing. Um, so either one would be right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that triangular piece out of it right here. So triangle isn't a dimension, isn't a type of shape that we have. I guess it's a wedge shape if you want to try to get the wedge shape to do what I'm going to do here. I think I'm just going to draw some construction material though, and the reason why I draw like this may be different than even how some of the literature that I attached last week and walked you through mostly coordinate point drawing and stuff, and that's fine. I'm just going to kind of draw a little bit lazier in some ways and a little bit more like Inventor, is I'm just going to kind of draw something and then build off something. So this is the way I 3D model a lot, is just I'll just draw some shape and then I'll build from it. And so if I want to do what I want to do is just draw that triangular shape to cut it out. So I'm just going to draw like on my construction layer and I'm going to use these normal draw commands. So maybe I'll just use a polyline draw command, or a line would be fine, but I'm going to use a polyline because I think about I'm cutting shapes. I'm going to use shapes to cut shapes. And so generally I like those to be joined polygons. And so if I just draw with a polyline, it will join those together for me. And then it's easier to kind of extrude or cut with those shapes if they're all joined. You can always join lines together like we would, right? Like it's a modified tool as well to join lines. If you just draw with lines and join them, you can even select geometry to make it 3D with just selecting all the line segments to join the geometry during the selection phase to make a cutting shape essentially. But so there's a lot of different ways. But if I draw with polyline, it'll be a closed shape. It looks like to me it's like 60 degrees if I'm just looking at I'm just kind of looking at this main page here. So really I need this like 60 degrees up from there to wherever that I don't really have the linear length of what that is. It's really a degree thing, 60 degrees up from that bottom corner up. And then I just need to cut that out. So I feel like if I can draw this, I think I can use those polar tracking. I've got my 3D object snaps on, right? So make sure that's maybe you always have to add that 3D object snaps to your status bar and check which ones you have toggled on, which I have most of mine on. And I have my 2D object snaps on. And I've got my polar tracking on. And I've got my object snap tracking on. So I've got all that stuff on that helps me once I pick like a polyline. I can pick a surface plane. I just kind of hover over it for a second, like this is the plane I'm going to draw in relation to. And then I can come down here to maybe one of these grips will hopefully show up. I try to get to kind of keep drawing on this plane is make sure it stays highlighted when I'm kind of during, like if I move over here, then it's going to draw on this plane. And I'm going to draw on this plane here. So I'm just going to be like, oh, and there's a grip with my plane highlighted. So I feel like if I click there, what I'm looking for is like a 60 degree up from there. And I don't know if this is going to snap for me real good here, but maybe that's 30. So here's my object snap tracking kind of works, or that polar tracking does. Like here's like 30 degrees, and then this would be 60 degrees, the next one. That's because I have my 30s and 60s toggled on. So I can kind of like, there's my 60-degree angle, which it's calling it 120. That's the difference of whichever side you're looking at, right? So I could tab over there and lock that in at 120 and then tab back and say I need to go to where it intersects here. And it's just kind of like 2D geometry. You can go like beyond what I need to draw like this and see, and then I just ended, and I'm gonna escape this command here, but like I can use that to trim that off too, like I could 2D geometry. So like like what I just did, or like with my box. Oh yeah. So I mean, there's really no settings that I'm just making sure that you have like 3D object snaps on. with particular like snaps associated with 3D geometry. And I have my 2D geometry. Yeah, and that's not always loaded on your default. I don't think 3D object snaps is always loaded to your status bar. But it looks like a 3D cube with a little square on it. Whereas your 2D one looks like a 2D cube with or a 2D square with a square. So I have my polar tracking on for sure. And that's how and I had 3060s, 90s targeted so that I could pull that 60-degree uh, angle that I need. And that's really all I have. I don't, and I have my grid on, but sometimes I even turn off my grid when it comes to 3D work. But I always have I have this to kind of keep my bearings of where I am or my view cube, but I'll keep my grid on for a minute. And then I'm just drawing, yeah, with a polyline, kind of hovering over this surface so it highlights it like I'm drawing in relation to this surface. And then I'm just going to select a grip with that surface selected. And so I'm snapping into that grip. If you don't, yeah, I think the 3D grips look like a big blue type looking grip, and your 2D grips still or snaps still look like the little green imagery. But then what I wanted to do was stay locked into that 120 degree. So I tabbed over to 120 and locked it in at that. So I'm at that 60 from the other side, 120 from the other way. And then I don't really have a good snap here. Maybe this is where I need to be. Maybe that would be the intersection point. If I doubt that, I can always just kind of go long like I would with 2D geometry. And then I can also like hook back into this point now with a polyline here. Maybe I can come over here and hook back up to this one. I'm going to trace back over this one to this top and then back along to where they intersect each other, maybe like this. And so those are there, and you can trim these the same way. I should be able to trim this, trim that. Oh, maybe it's not trimmable. Well, that's okay too. Because all it is construction geometry. And so sometimes if I can't like lock into the point, I think this is fine though. Maybe it will let me, I don't know if it'll let me trim it if I go to a different look here. I don't know if I don't think, maybe that won't let me trim that. I was thinking it would, but I suppose I could pull it back but I don't think it really matters to me actually. I did pull them back to kind of where they intersect each other, but I think I could actually leave that long anyway and still make the shape here. They like bury behind. Yeah, see, how do you show them? You can always do the bring to front, right? I think we have those options here, maybe. Let me look for them a little bit. Maybe they don't have bring to front. What I do is I toggle through different, like I feel like they will get lost with like shaded edges here, and I won't be able to see them. I like to use the other wireframe on occasion. So I feel like I toggle between these two quite a bit when I'm drawing with 3D geometry. I obviously don't use 2D wireframe anymore, but I use this wireframe, which will still allow me to use my 3D mouse to rotate around this thing. Or your shift, hold down the scroll wheel is also how you kind of act like a 3D mouse. But is it on here somewhere? If you select it, yeah, it's definitely going to be. I'm sure it's on here somewhere, and it's going to be a key command too. I don't know if it's like send. Yeah, still have all. Yeah, you can do all kinds of manipulation stuff, right? Like I could turn off my visible object stuff, and there's just that. I still don't think this allows me to trim though. Maybe it doesn't allow me to trim 3D geometry. I was thinking it would, but because I'm thinking I've used that before, but I mean I've pulled that back. That's still kind of dangerous, but I have this like shape. I'm gonna leave mine I'm gonna leave mine extended. Technically, I don't have all mine joined either. I drew it with two different kind of line segments. But let me play around with this for a minute and see. Obviously, I haven't drawn the shape since last year, so this is good. It's almost like I have a new look at it myself. But let me turn this back on. what I want to know, I've pulled my ends together after I've drawn it, and what I'm going to use is kind of this press pull command, which I did, I think I used it on a video. I can't remember if I did it in class or not, but so press pull will just kind of like any closed geometry you have, you can choose to kind of press pull it into. It's kind of like to me, it's like extrude. Extrude is maybe specific to some shapes. Revolves. Okay, so press pull is one that I use a lot here, and I should be able to press pull this shape. It'll recognize it. So I've not joined this yet. Like this is polylines, but they are technically not joined. So maybe it doesn't matter so much if I join them. It will recognize that shape. Let me go to my shaded with edges. So I definitely know that I have a closed polygon here out of construction material. So it should choose to allow me to press pull this, and it recognizes that geometry as something that is closed. And I can press pull this and drag this through like this. And mine's on the construction layer because I kind of figure sometimes I do my subtraction work on a construction layer. Not that you have to though. It does sometimes your layers maybe matter a little bit less here. Sometimes I still try to use my construction layers for this kind of stuff though. Um, and so here I can just pretty much target this as how thick I want to cut this through. So I'm targeting a grip here. And then it's just actually is cutting that through. So the press pull knows to like use that to cut, which is kind of interesting, right? If I let me try a different way too. So that just recognizes my geometry. I know yours could be different, so I'm just trying to like try a few different things here. But if I choose extrude, I think I have to choose all of the. I don't know if it's going to let me do this the way I would think it should. I would feel like I could choose an extrude and then choose the geometry, but I maybe have to close it to use extrude. So let me try that now. If I do like join this geometry. So I'm kind of joining my construction geometry. That's not exact. It won't let me select that really great. Maybe if I need to turn this off for a minute, then maybe I can join these things. And now I have a joined polygon here. Then if I extrude this thing, let me try now just to shade it with edges and try to extrude this. Yeah, it'll let me get it if I select it just right. It's just gonna be harder with when it has these surface faces as a solid, it can be harder to kind of get this. So I think there's some advantage to toggling between different like view styles, visual styles. But extrude, if I can get this probably selected there, and then I would right click or press enter, and then see, then I have like this extrusion type um, shape here, and then I click it. But see, it doesn't use it as a subtraction necessarily. It kind of uses it as like it added, which is kind of how we were doing it last week when we did some of the cutting on Das Boot. We kind of use like polygon shapes and then we would subtract from them, which was an order of operations command. So, if I'm using extrude, I feel like it has to be a closed polygon, but I'm I'm gonna do this a few different ways just for this very reason, because I think there's just a lot of ways to get to the same result here, right? So I'm gonna back mine up to where these are not joined if I can back mine up far enough before I do the joining. Yeah, so now I'm back to where the shape I drew is not joined. And so I'm going to go to the wireframe and see if I can extrude by choosing multiple pieces that are not joined here to make a shape like this. I think I can. Once I have them connected, I can say enter. Then it gives me, even in wireframe, I kind of get the idea that it's like it's making a solid here in some ways. And so um, because it works well, so that's the benefit. It'll work as kind of a subtraction or sometimes an add. It seems like it recognizes addition or subtraction based off maybe its boundary. And so I think it already recognizes that was maybe you were doing a subtraction. Um,
Pulls like Swiss Army knife.
yeah, presses or pulls, boundary area.
The other one, like, perfect.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know. I can't say what I think of are the best advantages, other than if one's quicker than it is, right? Um, if you do press pull and it's adding, because I think okay. So let me anyway. Yours did, so did mine. Mine subtracted immediately. If I turn this back on, you can also use it to extend though. So if I'm back into here, I know we're talking about more than, but if I press pull, it'll also recognize like a face like this, I think, and then it will allow me to actually extend too. So it does subtraction and I feel like it's kind of a smarter. it's almost like a smart command that it recognizes what you want to do with it in some ways, right? It'll actually allow you to press pull and add or press pull and subtract. I can't remember if when I'm in it and I have this shape, press pull, specify extrusion height. Yeah, it's going to recognize this as a subtraction, which is kind of nice. Yeah, and that's what I want to do. So I'm just showing you, you can when you do the extrude, if you add like a box like we were, then we had to use subtract, which is this solid editing type tool. And you have to choose the one to keep and then choose the one to subtract from, kind of like a real subtraction problem in some ways. Choose what you're keeping and choose what you're subtracting from it. And then these I'll just turn off like with my construction layer later. I'll just turn them off. But essentially we have that to cut, and then we have another shape to cut here, right? I don't know. I feel like where's my, right there. And I'm just going to go over this, like I'm going to go over 2.12. Maybe I'll just cursor down along this thing, or I could draw that line as construction material if it helps me to have an endpoint. So maybe I will. Maybe I'll just draw a construction line from this point over 2.12, and then I'm going to go up 0.62. So I'm just going to draw this shape. Yeah, with construction material, and I'm going to draw it over, and then I'm going to enclose this polygon so that I can use it as a press pull, or I can use it as an extrude. So I'm just going to draw that shape pretty much on the same. So 2.12 up 0.62 and then over 0.5. So I'll leave this up on my other screen, but it comes from this back corner here. So I feel like it's going to be kind of another polyline. And let me get out of my commands here. Polyline on this particular surface from this point here. And sometimes it doesn't, maybe it doesn't. There we go. Now I've got my surface selected. And then I'm going to come along this way. And if it helps, sometimes it's weird that it's trying to get all these grips. I can pull it out past, get it on the projection plane that it's at like this, and then say that this is only 2.12. Is how far over that starts right here. And then it's going to go up 0.62. So to me, it's a little bit like drawing pictorial drawings in a way, right? Like, and then it goes over this way, 0.5. And it goes down till it intersects this again. And then I'm going to drop back into this. So then I have this little shape here if I turn off my, oh, we're still getting crazy now. So then I have that little shape now if I'm looking at it that I can use as a press pull as well. So maybe I'll use press pull again, press pull this, at least over like right here somewhere, or I can enter in the number that it is like 0.96. And now it looks like it cut that. So one thing that hasn't happened to me yet here at all. I'm gonna escape that command and turn on my shaded with edges. So that's looking pretty good. Two little cuts there. Sometimes when you're drawing on the actual surface to do a cut through, maybe it leaves like it's easy to not be to cut all the way through, I think. So in some cases when I'm doing cuts, sometimes I'll extend the cuts beyond what I need it to cut to get a cleaner cut. So just beware if you feel like you've done a cut, but you're still seeing a small surface. It could be that you didn't capture the right width in your cut or your depth or whatever. It can also be that sometimes it's just slightly off and it leaves some of the surface plane because of the point that you locked into. If I didn't have this technically on the right point here on this surface plane, if it was slightly in, then it was going to leave this surface. So sometimes when I draw my shapes, I might choose to kind of extend them beyond what it needs to cut, because that's totally allowed. So just be aware. Sometimes you have to manipulate your cuts to cut through. Maybe I'd have to like draw some construction material a little bit this way by, sometimes I'll use like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch beyond, then draw my geometry and then let it cut through like a 1/4 inch on each side, like make sure it cuts completely through my object. So just like this is working fine for me. I'm referencing the surface of the object and kind of drawing on those surfaces. But sometimes I need to maybe cut beyond if I have some trouble with that. So, and then I just need a circle cut in this, right? And then we'll worry about getting it on a drawing then. So let me do my circle. I'll just draw where the center of the circle is. So it looks like it's 0.106 from the back. I'll show what I'm looking at here. Oh, I don't know. Will I? Maybe I can grab it right here. So I'm just gonna locate a line end that will be there. So I think I'll just come in from the back 1.06. I'll just retrace over that with my geometry, or you can just cursor over if you can. It's just hard to hold it in the right place. And then it's point up 88, 0.88 up is where this circle is, and that is a 0.5 diameter circle drill through. So let me do that. 0.106. I'll just draw it all from this surface plane as well. So here's my polyline. Here's this point. Here's this surface. I would come this way. But you can cursor. I just feel like it's easy to get off this. It's kind of hard to lock in maybe and get this to be right. So I'm just going to trace over this surface, this point. I'll zoom in a little bit. This surface, this point. Yes, draw along here. That dimension. Sometimes I pull this beyond so I can see it clearly that it's on the projection plane. Yes, that's right. I just need it to be 1.06 inches long. That's right there. And then it goes up to the center of circle, 0.88. So then I have an endpoint to snap a circle to. So I'll just use my circle command. 0.88, 0.88. And then this circle is a half inch, so you could draw by diameter or draw by radius, quarter-inch radius on a half-inch circle. There's my endpoint that I can snap to. On this surface too, right? If I highlight this surface and then come in here, pick that endpoint, that circle is going to be in relation to that surface. So, and I'm drawing by radius, so that's 0.25. There's my circle. And then I'll press pull that through, press pull this shape. Maybe it's going to recognize more because everything's kind of joined. So maybe I can, I don't know, maybe an extrude will work better here. I don't know. Extrude this shape. Maybe I'm going to have to turn off this for just a minute and go to my wireframe. Let me see press pull on just this. Yeah, press pull will work better maybe on the wireframe. It just can be hard with the 3D object and its surfaces. It just picks up to where it's hard to get the right 0.96 is my width or depth here. So this, I think, is a hole through. Let me check it. Am I shaded with edges? Yeah, that cut my hole through there. Yours did not cut? What did it do? Yeah, that was hard for me to get to appear until I went to a wire edge there for sure. It just didn't like it, it wanted to select surfaces along with that geometric shape there. So yeah, this to me, I toggle back and forth between these two quite a bit in AutoCAD 3D as far as what works for me. And so did it add a solid? Did yours add a solid though? Yeah, instead of cutting, did it actually add a solid or did it not do anything? If it added the solid, it wouldn't be the end of the world because then you just could do like subtract. Yeah, subtract, and then you would choose like, yeah. I'll show you. So let me do mine. I'm going to actually do mine as an added solid again. Because sometimes in my mind, I'm like, it doesn't matter at this point as long as it will, I can get back to where actually, so there's mine. There's my drawing that I drew. I think when I drew it in, I can get off that command. I drew it in when I was in shades edges so I could see it like this. Yeah, and then if you did press pull and then you did this and it added a solid point. I'm just going to try to see if mine does. Mine always wants to do a cut, but um, I will do an extrude because it should add a solid. Or if I did a cylinder there, press pull cut. Extrude will be hard to work. Did you do yours as a cylinder though, or did you do yours as just a drawing? Let me do something real quick. I'm just trying to get mine to malfunction as well. So, or not really malfunction, but do a different function. This extrude this way, 0.96. This should be a solid on mine when I go back now. Let me see. So mine is a solid. So here's how you would use subtract though. If yours put in a solid, then we can just use subtract. And this is subtract, solid subtract. It just wants to know what you're keeping first, which is going to be this particular solid. And then what I'm subtracting would be this one. If I can, yeah, so I've selected what I want to keep and then pressed entered, then selected what I want to subtract and press enter, and then it will subtract it for you. So to me, it's not the end of the world if press pull ends up doing a solid or not. Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes it will. Maybe it's how it's interpreting the geometry. So if it does add it like mine did here now, subtract is subtract, and then select. Yeah, it's in solid editing. Yep, it's the two boxes that are the different colors. So we've only used a few. We haven't used very many of these commands. I think I used union on the boot once, and then subtract is the opposite of union here in some ways. But it just has an order of operations that you want to. Once you select the command, you want to select the object that's staying and hit enter. And then you want to be able to select the geometry that's getting removed, which I'm able to just highlight on mine, and then I hit enter and it will remove it. But if it doesn't, it's just trouble like selecting which ones, then just sometimes I will then go to my wireframe so I can kind of see them separately, and I'll be like, hey, I'm going to do subtract. I want to do this object as my keeper and this one as my subtraction. Sometimes it's just easier to select a part of the geometry in the wireframe view than it is in the solid view. And then I hit enter, and in the wireframe view, it'll be hard to tell it did anything other than it turned my construction circle to visible line, because that's actually what's left. It almost consumes yeah, just kind of consumed my sketch in some ways. And then when I turn this on, it will be whole through. So to me, whether you use like there's just quite a, whether it creates solids or negatives is fine to me. It's like I just will use whichever. But it didn't work. I'll help you a little bit after. What I do want to check is this: even if your shape is not completely done, let's just all towards the end of this class make one last. I'm going to turn off my construction stuff right now. Turn it off the same way I would anything. Maybe I'll go to my visible object layer here. So I'm on my visible object layer. And now we're ready to now we're ready to do add this to a print. And so the way this is what we were doing last week, though it didn't work, but it should work. What I want you to do is just hit this base. So I'm still on the home tab in model space. I just want you to hit the far to the right is the base little icon here, base, and then it says from model space or from inventor. And this is really like to go to a drawing. So my particular drawing only has a B-size sheet. If you have more than that, anyway, this is what should come up. You should hit model space, then you should select your object. So I'm going to select this object that we've been drawing, and then I'm going to hit enter. And then mine goes to a layout. When you hit yours initially, it might want to download that. Is that what it's doing right now? To download, and then let it download, and it might take just a couple of minutes to download. But then don't hit restart when it says. What it's going to do is it's going to download a plugin from Inventor to CAD. It's just kind of like, I think Autodesk has made this kind of plugin so that you can take some of the annotating and view creation that Inventor has into CAD. And so give it some time. Mine won't do that because mine just stays downloaded all the time, but yours should. And then it should, once it's finished downloading, because I think it goes to a menu that says, go ahead and download this, and you say yes. And then it goes through like a prompt where it's like downloading this thing for churning away for a few minutes. And then when it gets done with that, just say not now. Don't say restart. Say not now. Not now. And I could probably actually do this over on a computer that's not turned on, because that's what I did in my videos. I just logged into one of your computers from here, and I kind of walked through. It was one of the videos that I loaded last week that said to watch. Because the only thing we were messing up with last week was we were always hitting restart after that, which is intuition is that once you've downloaded some software, you usually have to do a restart on your computer. In this particular case, we want to say not now. And then it will allow you to use the functionality of this. So I'll just pause this for just a minute. Resume this back to this one here. So yes, once that loads, just say not now. Then it may make you actually select again. I don't know. Like it might be in the command again, but if not, once it's loaded and you say not now, it should just be when you select base now from model space and you select an object like this particular object, and then I hit enter. The next thing it should say is this, like, going to enter this onto a, onto to make this. It's actually picking a layout that you have available. So if you have a bunch of layouts, I think you can use the arrow key to like go down and select what other layouts you might have. Mine only has one. I only have one layout because I've only loaded the B size template. But in the event that you wanted this to end up on a different one, you should be able to like arrow down to pick which sheet you want to send it to. I want to send mine to the B size sheet. So then I have it here, right? So I forgot to get rid of my viewport, but I will in just a second. So what it does is it'll let you place this. It's kind of, I think it already kind of does a scale for you automatically, like is going to apply a scale. So I don't really know what this scale is, but I can modify it later. So really what I have to do is just like left click, and that will place it down, and it gives me access to all this stuff to change. The only thing I would really want to change here right now is if I didn't draw this correctly, this is kind of your one chance to change the orientation right here. Once you place this, you don't have an option to reorient the view. I think you only get it on the initial placement. So this is critical if you end up modeling it incorrect and wanting to orient it different than how it was modeled. As far as like what's top, what's front, what's right side, you can actually select that here in the orientation selection here. Right now, it's showing that this is the front view selected, which is actually how I wanted. So without a lot of pre-planning, this actually did draw the thing how I wanted it to be oriented in my front view. So I don't have to really make a change, but you'd be able to change, and pick which one with all these orientations are the correct one for what view you might want to be as your actual front view. So it's kind of a way to manipulate from what you've drawn. And maybe it's a little bit of a lazy drafter's way of getting it. Even if I model it wrong, I can get it right on my drawing, which isn't really lazy. It's just kind of being like, maybe I'm not going to worry about these details if they don't matter sometimes. But if they do matter, I got to maybe be pre-plan a little bit more. In this case, this worked out great for me. So I can just hit enter. Then this just wants to know what other views you want to place with this. So I think I forego. I didn't draw the top view. I didn't end up needing any dimensions for it up there, and it's pretty well defined in the front view. So I chose to omit the top view, but I did put in a right side view only because I need to at least capture the depth. It's kind of like if you put in a top view, maybe you don't need a right side view. I just chose to put in a right side view like this so I could capture the depth of the part. And that was the only like orthographic view that I wanted. And then I just wanted an isometric view like this. So I placed this one maybe over here for right now. So I have those three views and I just hit enter. And then now that I'm here, technically I'm not going to modify that. I can get this isn't really driven by the viewport though, so say. So I'm just going to select my viewport and delete it. Sorry, not that. I want to delete it. Select my viewport and just get rid of those. We actually don't use viewports. Your views aren't, they're coming from like what we call the base model, which is very, very Inventor-esque. And that's why it loads this like Inventor plugin in order to do that. So this is cool. This is, I have two hidden lines here. And all this stuff I should be able to manipulate, like which layer maybe some of this stuff is on. I'll have to play around with this. Maybe we'll play around with it tomorrow and just jump back into this to dimension it. Because what I have is just getting familiar with what axis I have. But like if I select the view, this is called the parent view. And to edit that view is up here on the ribbon menu. When you select a view, it kind of takes over your ribbon menu and gives you some other things. We can do quick section views, quick detail views. If I didn't project the view that I needed, I could add another projection that I forgot to place. So if I needed a top view, I can get back into placing one. If you go to edit view, it brings up that little menu. It just doesn't have the orientation tab is the only difference here. You get that on the first placement, but not now. And I don't use the select menu very much. I think it's where I can go back in and select uh, stuff that I may have forgotten to bring in because I can have multiple things in the model space and select which ones to bring into my drawing. I'm going to cancel that, but edit view. I think I went over this maybe in a video, or maybe I haven't talked about this too much, but definitely in a video I have for sure. And then the next one down is hidden lines, and I can choose what is displayed. Normally, our orthographic views would have these ones. It'd be visible and hidden lines. That way, I'm seeing visible and hidden lines in my two views here. So I'm going to leave that one the same. I can scale it up or down. So it's just a decimal scale to enter. This is a one scale. So maybe I'll say, what does 1.5 look like? Yeah, maybe I'll do my drawing at least 1.5 scale. Just I have to remember whatever that is. It also has a quick scale change right here, like a viewport would. A quick access to the default scales here. So 1.5 is not one though. 1 to 1.5 is one. But it scaled up this one for it automatically because this is considered from, it's getting sized and it's getting its like line types and everything from the parent view. So anything that I change on this one is going to change on this one. Yeah, to change the scale, there's a couple different ways. You can either, yeah, I go like here to edit view, and this little scale feature is how I would scale this. Right now, if I went to change the scale, it's already telling me, hey, this is being scaled from parent, which is actually what I want. So if I needed to rescale this, I would need to know which view is the parent, which is this one, and then edit this view, and then I have control over a scale. It shows what the scale is. It's 1.5 scale. So I'm going to leave mine at just like a 1.5. Visibility, I don't think I use a lot either. What is the visibility one? Oh yeah, sometimes we will use this. Just if something like bend extent, sometimes it's the lines should be added for when fillets, fillet radiuses blend into straight. Anyway, we'll see what geometry we may need to toggle that on and off or change what is showing interference edges, tangent edges. Yeah. So definitely some control if I feel like I'm missing some visible line work or even hidden line work, maybe it's just a matter of that. This one I need to change. Maybe I'll scale this back down to like a one scale. Like isometric views don't always have to be the same scale as their orthographic counterparts. And it's pretty common in mechanical parts to make this, sometimes this is a smaller scale than what's going on here. These are bigger to detail and to annotate. And sometimes these are just for view sake. So I'm going to select this view. I'm going to do a couple edits to it. I don't want it to show hidden lines. Like normally we wouldn't draw hidden lines on an isometric view anyway. So if I just want to change it, let's select it, edit my view. There's my little view options. So I'm going to change the hidden lines to show just visible lines. I'm not going to shade it. I'm just going to do like this. That is visible lines only, like we would draw it in 3D or in 2D kind of. And then I'm just going to change the scale. It's also coming from parent, but maybe I'm going to override that, say like, well, I don't want it to be from parent. I just want it to be like a one scale. So not that it has to be anything particular, but maybe I'm just small enough that I show what it is. And here's where I'm going to detail everything out. And then I can just enter, yeah, instead of having it from parent, which is its default, you can choose to break that relationship kind of by entering a number. Yeah. And then if you always mess that up and you don't like it, you could always do like a new projected, like if I'm here again and I want to do a projected view, it'll allow me to get right back into placing views. So that are going to be from parent. So you can always get back to if you ended up hating something that you did to your isometric view, you could place a new one. It's just like projected view is an edit. So I usually get to that one by like selecting a view and right clicking, and there's my edit the view on this big right click list. But this is ready to dimension, but I think I will stop right here and say tomorrow we can dimension it. I'll go through here and like maybe push some of the stuff to the correct layer so it shows up right, and put on some center lines, center marks, and for there, and then just some dimensioning that I will do. So we're just going to be able to do the same thing where we go to annotate and dimension it and pull some of these dimensions, click here, 1.75. If it clicks in and grabs the point right, when you go to move stuff, your dimensions should move with it, right? Like so the nature will be that sometimes this makes some of the dimensioning and then moving your drawings are way faster without having to constrain dimensions. Like this kind of drafting, those dimensions will kind of move with you. There could be a few that are hard to get to like lock into points and they'll throw up a little exclamation point around them. That means they're just having a hard time to associate their grip. And some of them just are annoying and they won't accept the reassociation. So not all dimensions end up being like, I don't know, like super snapped in correct. Some of them just are temperamental, I guess, is what it is what I've noticed when I go to dimension stuff. And I feel like it should stay locked into the object with no problems, but yet I have some problems. So Anyway, we'll come back in tomorrow. I'm just going to save this as where I'm at on this day, and we'll draw some more. But you should be able to dimension right on here. We're not dimensioning through a viewport. We're just dimensioning on here. They are uh, annotative style dimensioning still. So they should change with my scaling. I still want to add center lines. I'm not going to add any dimensions to the ISO view. And I just want to size and locate everything on this particular part. So I'll just go ahead and save this one as my 3D positioner in class. And then I can pick it up tomorrow and do some dimensioning. But yeah, if you're going to work ahead, what I'm going to really like nerd out on the actual shaft assignment, I'll go back into my well, maybe I will. I was trying to go to my, oh, here it is up on the screen. On these assignments that I have, the guide block, all of them will kind of need to be consider their orientation in some ways. So the guide block is not really oriented great in this view here. So this one here, I would like to drop this as the side that's down. I'm going to draw this as probably like the front view, and this is going to be on the bottom. And so to me, I'm almost going to flip it upside down from what it is. And it's debatable. You could almost argue to me that maybe I would want to show to stand it up on this edge with this kind of slot towards me in the front view. And that's a pretty good argument, kind of like the way we just did that last block, that it would be standing up on kind of its skinny edge but with probably with this slot towards me in the front view. So almost the bottom of this view might be the front view. I would say that's a good view of this one, or to place it down on this particular surface. And then I would show kind of probably a top and a front view for sure, because the top view would expose this little slot here. So I think there's a couple options that would work, honestly, but maybe this particular option isn't the best orientation to maybe set it down on those surfaces. So maybe I think these drawings were designed to be a little bit tricky that way. I just feel like there's still a couple of options with the 3D shaft. If you jump into this one first, really common on shafting to use the revolve command. Like I'm going to say, anytime I do a shaft, I'm going to use the revolve command. So we haven't done that yet, but if you know how to do stuff like that, when I do a revolve command, I usually draw it from like the side profile. Like you could like a lot of beginning drafters or whatever, they'll draw like shafts like this kind of as cylinders, or you could even almost use the cylinder command and like draw these different cylinders and kind of extrude them those lengths. And that would be fine. Like technically it would work just fine, but really common with maybe more experienced drafters, they'll do shafts as a revolve. And so they'll draw them from the side view, and when we do a revolve, we kind of just draw like half the profile and then revolve it around a center axis to make things round. So that's something that I stress a lot in my teaching of how to draw shafting is I'll draw planning ahead to use the revolve command and kind of drawing it from a side half profile. So it's kind of it is a weird concept, but I think it makes sense when we do it. And it's pretty common in shafting in their drawing where there's maybe not a best stable part position because it's round and it'll roll on whatever kind of positioner is holding it, especially to be evaluated, which sometimes it's in almost like a lathe type sequence or like a machine to hold it when it's a round feature like this, if we're going to check it for an inspector to check it. But the idea is a lot of times you'll see front views as being kind of where the shaft appears as a circle. So it's kind of like my front view is going to be this view here, and then my side view is going to be kind of looking at the side of the shaft. So that's just going to be pretty common with like any round parts that I don't know. Well, shafting in general, my front view will be kind of circular view. My right side view will kind of be its linear long length. So it kind of to me, it's just a weird part that we commonly draw in mechanical world that kind of breaks the rules on what defines a true like front view, because it kind of breaks the rule of part stability, and it even breaks the rule of the longest like width is not going to be in my front view. It's going to be in my right side or my left side view. So it's kind of this like kind of breaks the rules, but it really is like the way I'm going to show it is maybe the most common. It'll show up on prints traditionally. So anyway. And I don't have that shown here. I really don't give you any help on what it's going to look like on my drawing here. And that's kind of by design, but I'll do this one for sure. So that's all I really wanted to cover today, you guys. and then we'll just cover how to dimension that. I'm just glad we got them on paper. That was